What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Brian here with another hopefully thought-provoking piece. Before we do that, if you haven't subscribed to the page, please be sure to drop that sub and continue to follow. And then if you really enjoy it, hit that bell notification. Again, we're doing lots of content. We give advice or tips on what we found or what I found helps with social media. I also do thoughtful pieces like this, and then I also kind of have some theories, so it's a bit random with that. So it's random thoughts, social media thoughts, and just kind of thoughtfulness, or thoughtful pieces such as today. So today, as the title says, think like Seth, act like Gary. And the Seth I'm talking about is Seth Godin, and then, of course, Gary Vaynerchuk. So it's important to first say that I think that both approaches you need a little bit of both in both. You don't want to only think like Seth, and you don't want to only act like Gary. But I think that it's important. I think that if you kind of use that as a general guideline, as a general guide, you'll not only be successful or have a greater chance of success, because obviously we can't predict what's going to happen. You'll have a better balance at life. And, in doing my research for this, I came across some people who kind of disagree with Gary. They think that he focuses too much on the hustle and the idea that it takes a certain amount of time, or you have to just kind of put your head down and work for like 7 years. I think that this is a good kind of answer to it. It kind of puts everything into perspective. I was very fortunate in my life. I became aware of Seth first through his book Tribes and Linchpin, and then Gary through YouTube. I think I saw him first on the Breakfast Club, a clip. I think that was actually on Instagram. But then, in my research into social media, I became more aware of Gary and just the empire and the amazing things that he's kind of done, and it's really, really amazing that a lot of what he's doing and what he's done, he's showing us, and I think a lot of people don't take the time to go back and try to find like some of his earlier stuff. I saw a post that he had that had 18 likes on it, and it just kind of blew me away, because you hear people talking about starting out, and just yesterday Gary put a post up that said everyone starts with one, and it's true. So it's nice. So anyway, let me just go ahead and get into the video. I think the major difference is understanding that Seth is approaching, or seems to have a life approach of being an artist, versus Gary, who is a builder. Gary, I don't think, and I think this also plays into why he surrounds himself with creatives. Although Gary himself is a creative, he's thinking about building things, as opposed to Seth, who's thinking about creating something. So what's the difference? For me, somebody who creates something can be taking things that are already existing. They can be improving upon something that's already existed. The iPhone is not the first phone, it's just an improvement on the phone, depending on who you ask. I think Gary makes the phone. Maybe even is the person responsible. So I don't know, you may or may not know, but Steve Jobs designed and kind of came up with the concept of the iPhone. But there were lots of small people who got it actually made. I think Gary is the person who gets things made versus coming up with the concept of it. They both have a tendency for vision. And when I say that, I mean they're both visionaries in how they execute. But I think that Seth's approach is more from poking a hole in reality, whereas Gary just kind of takes what is reality, and he masters that reality. He masters the rule. He works within the rules, whereas Seth says, how can I break the rules or change the rules? And that's something that I relate to personally. I've always been a person who sees things and just wonders, how necessary is that actual rule? You know what I mean? And I think it's kind of important to understand, so Seth is not a hustler. He says that people do not like to be hustled. I agree 100% with him. That's why I tend to struggle with sales. My thought process is, if I make something amazing, you're going to want it. And that's kind of along the lines of Seth's idea of give something away to 10 people. And if it truly is amazing, they'll give it away, and so on and so forth. This to me contrasts Gary's jab, hook. Because what Gary's doing by giving away free stuff is he's setting up the sale. I don't believe Seth is setting up sales by giving his stuff away. It's just simply, if you make something that's good, people are going to want it. People are going to want to be a part of it. And the end result more than likely will be a financial gain, but you're not setting up the financial gain. You're just putting it out there because you are creative. Now, that's not to say one is better than the other. And that's why I say think like Seth, but act like Gary. So I think it's good to not think about the money when you're making decisions for your business, for your whatever it is that you're building, whatever it is that you're creating. I think you should approach it from an artist standpoint and not be afraid to give it away, because I do believe 100% that if it's something that's amazing, that's something that's good. I believe that they could have given away the first 100,000 maybe even iPhones, and it would have been a huge success because it was that revolutionary of a product. So Seth doesn't like to hustle. He's not a hustler. He's a person who thinks about what rules, what guidelines are absolutely necessary, because sometimes things are not necessary. And so, but as a result of Seth's kind of a person who's more thoughtful. This is where I think that being like Gary or acting like Gary can be a little bit more beneficial. Excuse me. Gary is an executor. I think that he has an amazing ability, almost borderline genius ability to pick up on patterns and use that pattern recognition to detect what is going to be popular. Now, this is not predicting what's going to be popular. It's based on what has happened, looking at what's happening now, and deciding what he needs to involve himself. So why is that different? How is that different? Why does it matter? Well, I don't think Seth cares about what's popular now. He's not trying to master Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. He still just writes a blog. I think it's amazing now that he's finally starting to let his lectures and other pieces of content come out on YouTube, but he himself is not pushing his stuff out on YouTube, although I think if he did, he'd be wildly successful. But he's not. He's an artist. He's not focused on having the most impact. He's just focused on changing the world. So Gary, he's trying to have the most impact. So this is where another instance where I think it's great that if you start from a thought process of not trying to have millions and millions of followers and just focus on making something or doing something great, but then taking that and executing and spreading it across the platforms. I 100% agree with Gary's thought of put it out on everything. Do one big piece of content, transcribe it, strip the audio, cut it down. If you got a dope editor, have them cut up unique content for Instagram. Put the audio on the podcast, make articles for a blog and or on LinkedIn. I think that is a perfect example of how Gary, or acting like Gary, is a great thing. They both kind of understand, do what you're good at, but their approach to how they deal with that is different. What Gary does is he surrounds himself with the people that are better at what he's not good at. Seth just focuses on doing that thing that he's good at. So Seth's an amazing writer. He does a blog. His blog is amazing. It's one of the top blogs. Gary is an amazing. I wouldn't not say Gary is a creative person, but I think that he understands how to play a role. And not saying that that's not who Gary really is, but I believe that he understands how to play a role and how to be a person. And he surrounds himself with creative people who understand him and understand how to formulate content around that. So, it's two different approaches to how to solve that issue of knowing your weaknesses and dealing with your weaknesses. And, so again, it's really just a matter of what's your goal? When I say think like, I think it's beautiful that both of them seem to not really be driven by money. I mean, I would say Gary's a little bit more because he has a business and he has businesses to run. But even I know for a fact that Gary's leaving money on the table. And I think that you really just have to ask yourself, what kind of person do you want to be, or how do you want to live your life? Me personally, I don't think that there's 10 people on earth that can sustain a life like Gary. He has a gift. He has a talent. He has an ability to keep pushing. And I think he really enjoys it. I think he lives for it. I think he has that Kobe Bryant drive and passion. And at the same time, I think that Seth is having an equal impact, excuse me, but he's not as driven as Gary, because I think he understands that you don't have to be the best, or no, let me rephrase that. Seth is trying to change the world. And he's trying to do things that impact the world. And you can be amazing at something and not have any impact. I don't know how much Jay-Z impacts the world. You can debate with me on that. I'm fine to have that debate. There's a lot of people that are very successful but are having little impact on the world. So where Gary is trying to leave a legacy, Seth, I don't think, to me, doesn't seem as concerned about legacy. He just seems like he wants to change the world by creating something that's amazing, something that's beautiful. Seth doesn't seem particularly in love with taking L's. This is something that I don't understand at all. I don't think you should ever love taking L's. I understand Gary's thought. And I think that, again, this is an instance where you should act like Gary. Never be afraid of an L. But if you're so blindlessly unafraid of losing, then you might miss some of the mistakes, or you might miss some of the lessons that L has given you. You know what I mean? And I don't want to put words in his mouth. I don't think I've ever heard him say that. He just doesn't pay attention. But I just feel like there's no way you can fully get all that there is to learn if you haven't fully respect it. That's why I love that Seth talks about dancing with fear. Acknowledging it, not trying to suppress it, which makes it stronger, and just dancing with it, moving past it. Seth says, you have to think in a different way. It doesn't, he doesn't seem like, this is another important distinction between the two, that I love. Gary, I don't feel like is making anything for any particular person. I believe he's just putting it out there because he believes it's the best information, the best product for people. Like his wines, I think it's a good example. I think the shoe thing is cool, but it's not like, something he believes in so much. Like these shoes are super affordable or they're going to a good cause. But I think his wine is something that he believes in. It's something that's close to his heart. It's more affordable. It's a higher value for the price than for the price. But I think that he's not thinking about anybody. He's just making, he's just doing, he's just executing. Whereas Seth talks about, rather than focus, on like, if there's 100 people and only 10 people like your stuff, rather than focus on how to get more of the 90, just focus on the 10 and giving them an amazing product that they can feel good about, and then that 10 in turn can go to the 90. I think it might not seem like that big of a difference, but I think it's a big difference. I think that focusing on making things that impact people is important, So what does it mean? I don't even know if it's possible to sum up what it means. I think Seth is an artist, Gary's a builder. Seth wants to change the world. He wants to impact the world. He wants to make things different. When he sees things that could be done differently or better, he's going to speak up and say it. Gary, he wants to build things for the world. He looks at what's happening right now and he masters those things. So, I think that in summary, maybe you should think a little bit like Seth and act like Seth, and think a little bit about like Gary and act like Gary. Me personally, what works for me is thinking like Seth and acting like Gary, because that allows me to do a little bit less of each. Because I found the balance is when I'm executing, but I'm thinking about the 10. I'm thinking about creating. A lot of times I see Gary and he's complaining about people calling themselves entrepreneurs, and he's like, you never sold anything in your life. And I feel like, he's talking to me, not in a bad way, like he's condemning me or he's saying, I'm a fake or phony. I don't like to sell things. So what's my place in the world? And then I find Seth. That's my place. I'm a creative person. I see things that could be done better. I see things that could be done with the things that are there. I want to create something new, something amazing, something that impacts people's lives. So that's my video. It got kind of long, but it's a subject that I could talk probably for an hour. And if you enjoyed it, let me know, and let me know what you think about both of them, Seth and Gary, and I will try to comment back to whoever comments. And if you want more, if you want me to continue talking about my thoughts about Seth and Gary, just let me know, and I will be happy, very happy to do. I think it's important to check out both. They're both amazing, and I'm thankful for the words that they both shared. So thank you again for your time if you made it all the way to here. And again, please subscribe to the page and share this video if you've enjoyed it. All right, until the next time, take it easy.